Ranting, reflecting, reasoning, reckoning. The Huddle.
On the Huddle this evening, Josie Pagani is with me. Hello, Josie.
Hi, Larry.
And we've got Cameron Slater from whaleoil.co.nz. Hello, Cameron.
Hey, Larry.
Good to talk to you. Josie, to you first, because you're into all this education stuff. This US research, well, you got an interest in this.
I've got kids at school.
Yeah, US research are claiming that most Auckland secondary schools intentionally they skew enrolment zones to improve decile ratings. I think one thing to come out of this was that actually the schools set all the boundaries. The ministry doesn't have a hell of a lot to do with it. What do you see in this?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? This dates back to tomorrow's schools, of course, where boards were given the say-so in drawing up their own boundaries. So you can't really blame them. I mean, schools are set up to compete against each other, so they're thinking as inequality, and there's no doubt about it, we do live in a more unequal society than we used to. I mean, the North Shore's pretty white and wealthy, and South Auckland's pretty brown and poor. And actually, a statistic I saw today, Larry, that said before KiwiSaver, only 17% of Kiwis had any financial asset at all, i.e. money in the bank. So in the context of this unequal society, you've got schools set up to compete against each other, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to screen out the undesirable kids to protect their reputation.
Well, okay. Cameron, do you blame the schools here? The schools obviously want the best students they can get with more money, I suppose, because they can support more programs and so on and so forth. How do you see it?
Slightly different from Josie, obviously.
Oddly enough.
But actually her preamble there leads into something. She's saying that 17% of people didn't have savings, but what they did have was a house and a house value, and the decile system reflected that in that people didn't want to see their house values drop. However, there are some schools that manipulate the system the other way, and I know of one school in the Howick area, an intermediate school, that would be a decile 8 if it wasn't for the 150 kids that the principal buses in from Otara each day in order to lower it to decile 5. Now, he does that for a reason. It gives him hundreds of thousands of dollars of extra cash by having a lower decile rating than he would do if he was in decile 8, meaning that he doesn't have to tax the parents. Instead, he taxes the government and you and I.
I think that's the problem, Larry. When you've got a school system, an education system like this, whether it's a decile system or league tables or whatever, set up to compete with each other, the incentives are to try and do things to sort of skew it in your favour.
But schools aren't all the same, and teachers aren't all the same, and systems aren't all the same, and parents know where they want to send their kids to, and so you do have to have boundaries and zones and those sorts of things, because otherwise it would just be a free-for-all. And if we are going to have a free-for-all, then we really need to go down the path of a voucher system.
Well, I don't know about that, because if you look at the statistics, we're actually doing really well in education. We're the fifth in the OECD tables for reading, maths, and
20% still fail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
so
right,
that's
Cam.
Really
because
well. Good.
It's that long tail. It's the kids that are failing. We've got the worst statistic for the difference between basically poor kids and rich kids when it comes to reading. And the problem with when you've got schools in competition, naming and shaming the bad schools doesn't make them better schools.
No, what happens is that you have, at that long tail, is you have decile 1 and 2 schools competing with decile 1 and 2 schools in the same area, getting the same rubbish results. You have to say that if we've got a world-class education system and 20% is still failing, and those that are failing are poor kids, then the decile system, which loads funding in favour of those poor schools, has failed.
Well, or the other way of looking at it, though, Cam, is if you look at, I'm sorry to bring Finland up yet again, but I mean Finland's the one that tops us in the education
and every
scale.
Teacher has a master's.
And every
teacher has a master's,
which is brilliant. Teachers, it's a profession
it'd be
that
great.
has
We'd
the
strip out 3/4 of the rubbish teachers we've got now.
No, but if they had masters, they wouldn't be. They're not rubbish teachers.
No, but the ones in New Zealand schools don't have masters.
They're on the same level. Yeah, well, that's right. So in Finland, one thing we could do, we were copying what works, is make sure that teaching has the same sort of prestige and
of course, Finland, though, is a monocultural society. There are no minority groups or large minority groups. It's basically a single ethnic group.
Yeah, but they've got no decile ratings, no league tables, and they do better than anybody else.
They've set the
and they've got
standards at the front end,
teachers.
saying that all the teachers have to have masters. Could you imagine the teachers' unions moaning about that if we put that in place?
No, I don't think they'd moan about that.
Of course they would. They moan about everything.
Well, you can moan, Josie, about the league tables, but parents do want to compare. By the way, I have a very good friend in Auckland, and he's got a master's, actually, and he teaches in a primary school.
Yeah,
It's few and far between, though, I would suggest.
If you increase the prestige of the system, the teaching profession, that's a really good thing.
OK, we'll come back in just a moment. Josie Pagani and Cameron Slater. NewstalkZB, it's now 15 to 6. It is now 13 to 6. Back with the Huddle, Josie Pagani and Cameron Slater. Cameron, to you first this one. Winston Peters has a plan for the SOEs that will be partially sold. He's going to buy them back at the price of the IPO. I'm not sure what happens if the price is lower than the IPO. It doesn't matter. Anyway, borrow from the super fund and KiwiSaver to do so. Do you see a few hitches in this?
Quite a few hitches. KiwiSaver accounts aren't his to take money from.
Correct.
So he would actually have to appropriate those funds in a form of nationalisation if he was wanting to do it. But here's the thing. If he wants to start a fund for buying these assets back, he could kick it off with $158,000 he still owes the taxpayer.
Okay. Josie, what do you say? I mean, it's like raiding bank accounts, actually, I don't know.
Exactly, Larry. Hands off my retirement savings, Winnie. He's losing credibility at a fast rate. Last week he was blaming the parents of immigrants for this massive super bill that's looming in the future for us all to pay off, and now he's trying to rob me of my savings. Yeah. You can't do that. You can't use retirement savings to subsidise a government policy in the future. You can't do it for anything, no matter what you think of that. And the truth is, Larry, we're not going to be able to buy them back. And if you look at recent history where the Labor government came in and bailed out Air New Zealand, they couldn't afford to buy it back, but they did manage to get 75% of it.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming that Winston Peters would buy the other 25% of Air New Zealand as well, if he's committed to this. But the super fund, Cameron, they're a guardian, don't they? They act independently from political interference.
Independently, but I wouldn't mind betting that the super fund, that indeed KiwiSaver funds that are out there, and also, ironically, probably ACC is one of the largest. I mean, they're sitting on $12 billion worth of funds.
Right, they'll buy into these.
They'll probably have a crack at all of them.
Of course they will, yeah.
It's almost like he's denying the fact that there is this looming crisis happening in super. He thinks it's some big conspiracy theory, but presumably he's thinking that when we do have to pay our super, and we have got this big bill in the future, is he just going to sell the assets again to pay that off? He's already spent our
Winston
super.
doesn't really care about retirement. For a start, he's already on the pension. Secondly, he's got his nice fat salary for being an MP. And thirdly, he's living with his retirement plan.
I do think that this is a bit of a credibility problem for him. I mean, not least of the fact that he's out there campaigning against asset sales when he actually sold Auckland Airport. And, there's a bit of a contradiction there.
He's always been prone to hypocrisy, our Winston, though.
Interesting. Look, I've got to go in a sec, but interesting that Herald on Sunday poll saying that 60% would buy shares in companies if they had the money, 70% under 35s, 52% of Green, 54% of Labor voters.
I mean, the government's handing out free money, Larry. They'd be crazy not to buy them. What I think's really stupid is that the vox pops of people down the street saying, would you like to buy shares if the assets are sold? And they all go, oh, yeah, that sounds all right. How stupid is that? You don't even know what the share price is.
Well, but the other thing is, you say free money, Josie. Come on, you're assuming that these prices are going to go up. I don't know.
But the government's offering them this little loyalty program, which is destined to fail, like Queensland Rail. But,
take the Labor Party lines there, Josie.
Come on, it's true. It's a fact. It's not a Labor Party line. It's a fact. Queensland Rail, they did a loyalty program.
Well, who would want to buy shares in a 19th century technology, for goodness sake? I mean, come on, a railway.
All right, well, thank you, Cameron. Cameron Slater, and thank you, Josie Pagani.